Hi, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Smiles. Today, it is my honor to interview someone who I am proud to call my friend and my dental technology mentor, Dr. Larry Emmott. Now, Dr. Emmott does not need an introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Dr. Larry Emmott has practiced dentistry for 30 years. But the last 20 years of his career, he's dedicated to helping dentists find and implement the right technology in their practices in a way that it saves them money and time. Dr. Larry Emmott is a leading authority on everything high-tech in dentistry, and he has written hundreds of articles in the most prestigious, most well-read publications. He is currently writing for his blog, Emmott on Technology, and he's lectured probably, how many hours? Thousands of hours around the country? Many hours, many hours. And he literally wrote the book about going paperless. So welcome to the show. I am so thrilled and honored that I know you're very busy, so I'm so happy that you found some time to spend with us today. Welcome.
Well, Gina, thank you. That was a very nice introduction. Thank you so much. I am flattered, and I'm really happy to be here. Part of what makes this so fun is dealing with people like you and other people I know in the industry, and this is great. It's actually a real privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. And, I want to start with something. Now, you often say that you started in dentistry in the BC era, right? Before computers. And of course, things have changed. So I want to ask you, what are you most excited about? What do you think is the biggest game changer in dentistry as far as technology goes?
I think it's because things are kind of coming together. When I first started using computers, they were just primitive. And we, basically if we could send a bill, we were like thrilled. And now we're doing it in all the areas of dentistry. It's communication, of course, with websites and text messages and emails and all the stuff we do, which was kind of like the beginning part, and just charting. But the new exciting things are diagnostics and treatment. Some of the things I've been reading about high-tech digital diagnostics are just awesome. And so I see this all coming together in a digital world where we'll be able to do better dentistry. We'll do it more effectively. We'll do it less expensively, which I think is huge. And we'll be better at doing it. So I see the world just opening wide up. Oh, and by the way, while I'm talking about that, is one thing that's key to all of this, and it seems so simple because it's not that new, but we're using it in new ways, and that's the internet. And so our ability to use the internet effectively, communicate with each other, online services, all those kinds of things are really bringing a lot of this digital technology together that we've had for years and just making it much more effective. So I guess that's it. It's the internet, which isn't new, but it's how we use it that's new. That's really exciting.
Absolutely. You made a great point. And, there was something that you've mentioned earlier that I kind of want to go back to, because I think that's a limiting factor for a lot of dentists who want to introduce the technology. You mentioned the cost. You said, technology would allow us to practice less expensively. And I just recently published an article on the ROI of, paperless dentistry. But what would you say to a dentist who was concerned about investing in technology, whether it's diagnostic technology or paperless technology? What's the ROI on that?
Oh, the ROI is almost immediate. But here's the problem, or the concern, or the issue. And by the way, we're seeing this change. I'm an old guy. You mentioned I've been practicing for 37 years. And so, when I started, again, we didn't ever even have computers. And so part of the struggle, the change, we'll talk about we'll talk about that, get back to this. I think there are some real barriers that keep this from happening. And cost is one of them. But what makes the cost a challenge is people aren't really ready to embrace it. This is one of my barriers. I think one of the biggest problems that I see in dentistry using technology effectively is the way we've always done it. And I did this. When I first started using technology and started getting excited about digital technology, and I was talking to some of my dental colleagues, and I was involved with a group called the Academy of Practice Administration, still a great group. And some of my mentors, people I really respected, said, Larry, I know you're into this high-tech stuff and it looks kind of cool, but what you want to make sure is that the computers support what you're already doing. Because I had great business systems, right? And I learned from great mentors. I had great business systems. So don't change your systems. Make sure the technology supports you. And I bought into that. I was wrong. And that's what I see as the big thing that holds us back is dentists buy technology, and then they try and make it do exactly what they were doing with paper. And it doesn't pay for itself. They have to have more staff instead of less. It takes more time to do things instead of less time to do things. So it's the ability to really understand and embrace that technology and use that as your first choice, not your secondary add-on. I think I might do this choice. It's your first choice. And the good news is that as time goes by, the newer generations of dentists, the young ones like you, are willing to embrace that more and kind of start with that rather than have to add it on. So a long answer, we can get into some more details of what that means, but the thing that holds people back is they don't really just use the technology effectively. They use it ineffectively.
You know what? You make a great point because I personally have seen it in many practices. And in fact, this actually reminded me of when we met for the first time, because when we came up with Yapi and it seemed like a great idea, but I remember my husband and I were just in our bedroom thinking, should we not? Does anyone need it? And there were two people that I wanted to talk to about this, kind of consult with before taking that plunge. One of them was, of course, Howard Ferran, who is a dear friend and an incredible person. And the other one was you. I mean, I have to know what Larry thinks about this. And I remember you were in California and you were so kind. You actually came to my practice to look at the software.
I remember that very well, yeah.
Yeah, and I will never forget what you said to me. You said, and I still, to this day, these are the words that I'm keeping in the back of my mind. And you said, this is a great product, Gina, but it solves a problem dentists don't even know they have. Right? And again, and that goes back to the fact that we are introducing technology, but we, like with paperless, we take an iPad, but we want it for it to work like a paper. Right? We get a CEREC, but we want a lab to do the restoration. And so a lot of times it is not efficient. You were the first person who, at least as far as I know, who made the description or differentiation between paperless and chartless. And you talk about that hybrid system. And can you share a little bit more about this? Because I think you made a great point in why sometimes the technology is not effective, and that's one of the examples that you use.
Yeah, let me grab a quick slide here that's kind of fun, that kind of talks about what you were just saying, because I think this kind of relates, and it'll lead into this really well. One of the things that I've been talking about now for the last couple of years, and it goes with exactly what we just said about, we have a problem that dentists don't even know they have, and it goes back to this guy. You may or may not recognize him. This is Henry Ford. And about 100 years ago, Henry Ford introduced that car right there, the Model T. And it changed the world. It revolutionized society much the same ways we see digital technology revolutionizing our world today.
Perfect.
The Model T was very affordable. It was very popular. And you could get it in any color you wanted as long as it was black. That's the only color. And people complained. They wanted options. They wanted different colors. And people said, Ford, why don't you listen to your customers? To which Henry Ford is supposed to have replied, if I listen to my customers, all they wanted was a faster horse.
Right.
All they wanted was a faster horse. They had no idea what was possible. All they wanted was a faster horse. Now, one of my favorite modern thinkers is this guy, Seth Godin. And by the way, if you don't read Seth, he's, after my blog, he's the second best blog on the internet. He's so much better than me. But anyway, Seth Godin's one of his most famous book is called Purple Cow. And he took Ford's statement and he said, but of course, a car is not merely a faster horse. Which I went, well, of course, that's kind of obvious. He said, just as email is not merely faster paper mail, word processing is not merely faster typing. Think of what we can do with, and Google is not merely faster yellow pages. So the idea behind that a car is not merely a faster horse is just kind of what we were saying with that barrier that holds people back. Do it the way we always did. We just want a different horse. We have no idea what might, in fact, be possible, and if we just had those tools available to us, what we could do. So, so having said that, I think that's we need to kind of help dentists understand what's possible. In fact, that's my mission. My mission is to help dentists understand what's possible, therefore they can make good choices. What I find more sadly is they go to the big shows like the California show, and they're prey to the best salesman that day, and they buy technology that may or may not fit their vision, may or may not help them. It doesn't, they don't know how they're going to incorporate it into practice. And then when they buy technology, they don't use it well because they don't know what's possible. They just got a horse when they realize that you really should have a super, charged sports car. So when we started first doing paperless, my first goal was in fact to get, I shouldn't say this, when I went paperless, I was forced into it by a staff member. I had, I'm a dentist. Gina, we grab one. We've got charts. And these were important to me. And I've been, I had Dentrix in '98. I had digital X-ray. Dentrix in '95, digital X-ray in '98. This is last century.
Right.
And we had nothing. I still had charts, and my staff members, she'd say, "What do you put on those charts?" I said, "Well, they're important. I need to write on them." She goes, "You don't use them, coach." I said, "They're my portraits." She finally convinced me. She says, "Why don't you try it one day?" And I said, "Okay, Monday, we won't pull any charts." Went through the entire day, 20-some patients. We needed 2 charts. I was right. Of course, I wasn't right. But the fact is that we had already had all the technology available to go with Chartless technology. And it was really that push that got me to do it. And I find that happens all the time with dentists. They may have great technology already. If you've got Dentrix, you should be paperless. No question about it. Some of the other software is not so much. But if you've got Dentrix, you should be paperless. And they just don't do it because they're kind of hung up on this way we always did. They're just afraid. So they need someone like my staff member to push me over the edge. That's the word. And then, I know we're going to get to this, but what really, I think in the last, so I went Chartless, paperless records Chartless in 2002. So that's 15, 16 years ago. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I think we've seen the technology allow us to change the way we do business. Now, what I'm calling that digital or paperless workflow. And I think that really is when things start paying off.
Absolutely. And, I have to tell you that when I started my own practice in 2002, I read some of the articles, and I was excited about, being paperless. And of course, I found some challenges along the way. The technology was still, the technology is completely different nowadays. And, my company was the first company to put in dentistry to put patient forms on an iPad or, communication on a smartwatch. And that was like 7 years ago. But so now it's completely different. But back then I found there were a lot of challenges. So what I'm curious is, and of course you would probably know, what percentage of dentists would you say are now paperless or chartless or still using paper records? Are we really seeing a lot of increase?
The answer is I think so. One of the questions that I ask when I do my lectures is, are you paperless? And the numbers have changed dramatically in the last 5 years. I go back, I'm so old. I go back, when I first started lecturing, I'd ask you, how many of you have computers? And not anybody would raise their hand, and how many have computers in the treatment room? Hardly anybody. So we've seen that. So you have to evolve from that. First of all, I have to digitize in some way, get a computer. Then I have to realize that I have a clinical application for that computer and put it in my treatment room. Once I have the computer back there, well, now I might start considering doing digital records. So we've had to go through these 3 little phases. So anyway, get back to the question. So when I would ask this question a few years ago, how many of you are paperless? The answer would go up 2 out of 100, 2%. By the way, I don't ask hands anymore. Now I do a really cool high-tech online thing where they answer with their smartphones. But now in the last year, I've been seeing when I ask that question, I'm getting as much as 40 and 50% of the audience, maybe sometimes more, who are answering they're already paperless or chartless, I guess, paperless charts. I don't think that represents an industry number. And all the research I've found, I cannot find anybody that has done that research. Because the people that come see me lecture, they're self-selected. They already want to know more about it. They're already thinking about paperless. They want to get better at it. So I don't think my 50% number really represents an industry number. So it's somewhere less than 50% probably, but it's growing rapidly. It's the number one question I get asked, how to go paperless.
Sounds great. So it looks like it's picking up, and obviously thanks to people like you and there are a few others that are also big proponents of technology and they're out there speaking to dentists. But what do you think is holding those who are not paperless, or and I've heard dentists say, no way, I'm not, I'm just going to retire before I have to go paperless. What's holding them back? What's the reservation there?
Well, let me kind of grab, I've got some information on that too, because I think there's three things that are holding us back. Let's do this one. Okay, make it do this. So, I'm going to say like two barriers. I think there's at least two. And they're kind of the same but different. And the first one is the one that I already mentioned, which is, just that we always do it the way we always have. And I always said that, that we kind of are stuck in the way we do things. We try and make the technology fit our old systems. But the other one is kind of the same but different. And that's just the process of change. It's hard. And people have, people say that people fear change. I'm not sure they fear it, but they certainly do resist change. And there's all kinds of books written about how you get people to change and how you get the process of change and why people resist it. This happens to be some information that came from, you can see the little chart there, says A.J. Schuler. He's a psychologist that studies team dynamics. And he wrote, he's written things on change, including a list of the 10 reasons people resist change. Now, from that 10, I've cherry-picked the two you can see here. People resist change. And by the way, let me back up. The reason I picked these two is because they're not ones we normally think of. And they're ones that I think apply directly to dentistry. And when you kind of start thinking this way, I think it's going to help you process the change. You meaning either you, the dentist, or you, the staff or team member. So people resist change because it threatens their self-image and they fear a loss of status. Give you two good examples. A while ago, and not as long ago as you might imagine, I was talking to a group of dentists and technicians who were involved in a gold study club. And they were teaching each other and learning techniques to make incredibly accurate gold castings. They were measuring the liquid and the powder, and the investment in the plaster down to the, tenths of grams. And they were controlling the temperature to the tenths of degrees and, making these castings. And they were just incredibly good castings. And then along comes CAD/CAM and says, that doesn't matter anymore. The temperature of your impression, it doesn't matter anymore. We're just going to wave a wand on a tooth and throw it in a computer. Computer will do the treatment. The computer will make it for you. So it doesn't matter. So those dentists that had spent their lives mastering this technique, do they say, oh, okay, good? Of course they don't. They say, no, that won't work. That's not as good as. What I'm doing is better than. They're going to resist the change because it threatens their self-image. They have a loss of status. Another one, which I think, because this is for staff, because I think doctors, let me back up. When I lecture, I talk about this to the audiences, very often I'll have either a group of staff members there, team members, and they say, our doctor sent us to learn this. And I say, yeah, you're going to go back and make him or her change? No. Or the doctor comes without the staff. I'm going, okay, I'm going to give you 3-4 hours of training. You're going to go back and tell the staff in 10 minutes? And it's one or the other. Sometimes the team is ready to go, and sometimes the doctor holds them back, and sometimes the doctor is ready to go, and she's all ready to go, and the staff holds them back. So the other one that kind of illustrates this same thing happened a number of years ago. I was helping an office in Ohio, go paperless in Chartless, and I'd gone through my little spiel, and of course I'm such a big geek. I think, of course, everyone would love this. And I got to the end of the day, and the office manager came up to me, and she was one of these women that we find in dentistry was so fortunate. She was great at what she did. She loved her job. She was the glue that held that practice together. Everyone loved her. She loved everyone else. Loved the doctor. It was, she was just a great person for that office. And she came to me, she goes, Dr. Emmott, I know you like this stuff, but I like pulling charts. I don't want to go chartless. I like pulling charts. And I thought, you what? You like a mindless job? And then it struck me that what she was telling me wasn't so much that she liked pulling charts. That was how she connected. When she pulled the charts at the end of the day for the next day, she'd go, oh, there's Sally, there's Gina, and I knew who they are, and I relate back to them. And then I also realized that was her system. that she had developed that system. She perfected it. She made it work. And when I was, we'll ignore that telephone. And when I was going to take that away from her, that was a loss of self-esteem. It was a loss of status. So I bring that up because I want to, for doctors, when you're trying to help your staff go, I never answer that phone. So doctors, when you're trying to go paperless and you've invested in the technology, it's real easy for your team to sabotage you. Sometimes, in the most well-meaning ways, because they try to do what's best for you, and they think, oh, he's making a mistake. She's bought the wrong thing, and so I just won't work at it. And then I've actually had team members tell doctors, oh, the software won't do that. When it will, because the doctor doesn't know. So the doctor needs to know what's possible. And you need to then help that team member learn that they're not going to lose status, that when they become, another thing I want to get to, because I think it's really a big new idea. What the doctor wants the team members to do is help them learn that they're going to become more valuable as they learn to use technology. They don't have to pull charts. They can be more valuable because they're going to add and learn to know the technology. But as long as they feel threatened, they're going to fight back. Long answer. I'm sorry, I rambled.
No. It's you know what, you made a great point, because, and it's funny, you kind of went in there right away, because one of my favorite quotes from your book that I often bring up in my own presentations is this: implementing new technology involves more than buying and installing a product. It also requires a change. People resist change for a variety of reasons, and overcoming this resistance from both the doctor and staff is often more of a challenge than actually using this technology. And it's so true, and we see it. The way it often happens is, the doctor gets excited about the benefits. They take a demo, they see it, they love it. And it's not just our technology, pretty much all technology out there. And then the next person to implement it is someone who's been, working differently for many, many years. They have their own workflow already established. They have a relationship with that job. That job is what defines them. And what I'm hearing you say, and I've heard change is hard. This is how we, overcome change. But you've said something that I've actually never heard brought up before. And I think it's so, so important that we should emphasize this. That what I heard you say is that if we want our team to adapt the technology, we need to help them re-envision themselves in the new role. Using your Fast the Horse example, she's no longer a farmer who is, walking behind that horse. She's now a race car driver who is, her responsibilities now change. And so now she's not that person who is pulling and filing charts. She's building relationships. And that's what we don't have enough of. The great thing about technology is that it can take off the boring, who likes filing or scanning? Scanning is like filing, but it's worse because now you're using technology and you're still not doing it right. So, it's, or fax, who likes faxing, but insurance companies.
1990s.
Right. So, we really need to help our teams to see themselves in a new light and how this technology will empower them and make their jobs more important. Dentistry is a relationship business, and the technology is there to help us simplify those relationships and make those relationships better and create not only better relationships and provide better dentistry, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you wanted to you said big new idea. I wrote it down. You said, I want to make sure I get to a big new idea. What did you want to talk about?
Okay. And by the way, thank you for just what you just said. One of the things I've been fighting, and everybody does in technology, it's machines, it's impersonal, it's a machine, I want to be sure, I want to relate to my patients. I'm saying, you don't get it. The technology allows you to relate to your patients better, not worse. I want to slap them. Anyway, it goes exactly what we were just talking about overcoming that resistance, understanding why they fear it, that it's a loss of status, helping them learn that they can get to a better place. And the idea, it isn't, it's so simple, and yet it is a big deal. And that is something I've been talking about for the last 2 years, something like that. And I call it the Practice Technologist. And it's not my idea. I read all the time on this stuff so I can stay up. And I was reading something. It says the office of the future. This is general business. The office of the future, the most valuable person is going to be the office technologist, the one who knows how to run the technology. They're not frightened of it. They look to technology first. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what we need in dentistry, that we need the practice technologist. Now, I want to be clear what that is, because I mentioned this once to a business consultant. He goes, oh, no, we've already got too many staff members. We can't add another one. I go, no. We're not adding anybody. This is really just how you think about doing something. This is the practice technologist, I believe, will in fact be the MVP, the most valuable professional of the future. Oh, that was supposed to turn to value. MVP is changing. My little slide's not changing. Anyway, the most valuable professional of the future practice. So let me just jump to another slide. Let me if I can do it this way. So if the technologist is the one that says, okay, if I want to remind patients, I'm a person of the 21st century. I don't remind people with a telephone. I mean, that was invented in the 1800s. I remind people with text messages. I remind people with email. And I think that way to begin with. It's not an add-on. And what's my job? My job is to understand and learn that system and to integrate it with the other systems. And if I'm that person who thinks that way, I'm going to be extremely valuable. So one of the things that I'm going to do, I'm going to look at two little things here. First of all, when in general business, when you say what, I want to say this one. Let me do it this way. This is fun. So we've got here, we have two pictures. We have the, on the left-hand side here, we have the person that's done it the way we've always done it. So she's got paper books, paper charts, paper billing, paper reminder cards, and over here's my practice technologist on the right-hand side. So who's adding more value? The person that runs they can run the computer, but then they run it to send out paper bills. The person that answers the phone, or the person that can do it electronically. Who's adding more value? And in general, the business, in general business, is considered that the technology adds about 84% more productivity.
Wow.
84%. So I don't know what it is exactly in dentistry. I have another chart that I'm going to show you in a minute. I don't know exactly what it is in dentistry, but it's 84%. Now, this is just for the doctors. I want team members to stop listening. So doctor, if you are running your practice right now with 6 team members, and you gave them the technology that allowed them to be 84% more effective, you could run your practice and do exactly the same thing with 4 people. If you had 4 people instead of 6 people, would that pay for itself? Obviously it does. So we asked earlier, where do you get the return on investment? This is where it is. And I used to be shy about saying this, that because part of it, we do have to get team buy-in to get this stuff to work. And I didn't want them to think, oh, I'm going to lose my job. So they would sabotage the dentist. I've gotten beyond that now. I think we have enough technology in place, enough people to understand it. That if you want to be the technologist, you're going to have a job in 5 years. If you think your job is to pull charts, let me just do this real quick. I'm going to go ahead and go into that other slide because it's pretty cool. So this is when I put together kind of the same thing. I don't have to do it this way. There we go. Okay. So here's the difference between the technologist and the paper assistant. So in the old days, on the left-hand side, you say if we have paper, you would have to pull charts. That's about 20 minutes a day. If you're a digital assistant, a technologist, you do nothing. You look for the lost chart. We do that every day. That takes 15 minutes. Well, that never happens. You call to confirm 10 minutes a day. No, the service does. It takes 0 time. Check eligibility on the phone. I tell people they wait 40 minutes at least to talk to the insurance company. No, you do that online as well. You enter data. Okay, this one's so classic.
Right.
I've got a computerized chart, but I don't use it. I do it on paper. So I go to paper and I make a little red circle around the tooth that needs a crown. Then I go to the computer and I do it again. Okay, so we draw the red circles on the chart, then we go and do it. Now, you actually just click once, so it takes about the same amount of time. Oh, the other one, enter patient form. Skip that one. So I have a new patient. I give them a piece of paper on a clipboard, or if I'm really cool, I give them a PDF of my website. Not bad technology. So now they have to enter it again. So do it on paper, enter it again. Do the red circles, you have to do nothing. Write notes, that takes 40 minutes. Edit notes, 10 minutes. Take a payment over the phone, no, we have online bill pay, takes 0 minutes. Put the charts away at the end of the day, no, just go home. So on the paper side, doing all those things takes 220 minutes a day.
Wow.
Over here on the digital side, it takes 20 minutes. That's the difference between a technologist, a person that's going to have value in the future and still be there, and a person that's doing things the way they always did it. If you look at those numbers, 220 minutes versus 20 minutes, that's 11 times. That's 1,100% more effective. Now, I can't even begin to say that it's actually 1,000% more. But let's say I'm 1/3 right, and it's 300% more. It's still 3 times better. Or if I'm 110% right, it's 100 times better. So that's how technology pays for itself. So maybe I've been rambling around. So let me bring it all back together. Who's the big idea is the idea of a practice technologist, and that is a person that as a team member that uses technology as their first choice, understands it, puts it all together, is trained to do that, doesn't even think about a paper chart, because why would you do that? That's so 1900s. And when you start doing that, you become much more effective. That's where we reduce cost. Whether it's 1,100% or not, it's going to be better, and that's where you're going to start getting the return on investment. And team members, if you want to be a dental team member of the future, you need to be that person. If you think your job is pulling charts and answering the telephone and filling out forms, you're not going to have a job in 10 years. I'm just sorry.
You know what? That's so true. I've actually done a calculation of the ROI of having a paper practice, a chartless practice. First of all, we should define the difference, because so many years that I've attended, I don't go to as many shows nowadays, but so many times when I'm at a dental show, and, someone comes up to our booth and they say, what do you do? We say, well, we're paperless. And they say, well, I'm already paperless. And we say, okay, well, tell us about your process. And what we find out is that they're not paperless, they're a paper processing plant. So can you please help us define the difference between a chartless office and a paperless office? What's the difference there?
Well, I want to make sure I'm getting what you're getting to, too, because I'm not sure. I want to make sure we're talking about the same things. Because I think, for example, if you fill out a paper form, you're not paperless. You may put it in, then the team member enters in the chart, so you may not have a paper chart, but you've still got a paper form. Is that, am I getting
Yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at, because that's what happens. You talk about that hybrid office, and in many practices that we see, they're paperless, meaning they have less paper in the office, but, and they have the digital chart, but everything is still done manually. And in my opinion, that's more expensive than having charts, because not only are you still spending money on paper and the workflow and the time that it takes to do all of that, but then you also bought this cool technology, the robust software, you have great computers. So what's the deal there? Why are we still, so many of us are still chartless, and what's really the difference?
Well, let me just start by saying, kind of setting the stage quickly. So in the last year or so, I came up with this thinking about the 4 stages of going paperless. Stage 1 is paper. You have paper charts, you have paper schedule, you have paper billing. That's where every office was in 1975. Stage 2 is hybrid. And by the way, I think there's hardly any dentists in the US that are stage 1 today. Stage 2 is most of us. So stage 2 is, yes, I have a computer, and yes, I use it for some things, but I'm still using paper. So I put I chart on paper, then I re-enter it in the computer. I make an electronic appointment, but then I send off a paper reminder. I send a billing statement via computer, but then I write I go back to the chart to write my notes. So it's that hybrid system, and you're right. That is definitely where it doesn't work, because you end up doing everything twice. You don't know where whether it's on paper or it's on the chart, so you got to pull them both. There's a lot of duplicated effort, that kind of stuff. So the next phase is the one that everybody thinks, okay, now I've really made it, and that's where they go paperless, where they have paperless charts. They go, okay, I've done it, I got my paperless charts, aren't I cool? And yes, you are cool. But the fact is, there's that fourth stage, which is digital workflow. And we've been talking about that a little bit. But I'm gonna go to a slide real quick and kind of define it a little bit better. But the digital workflow is when you start really eliminating forms, you eliminate prescriptions, you eliminate recall information. Everything starts being done electronically using electronic services. So let me let's do this real quick and kind of define some of these things. So again, this is going back to real basics, but I think it's worth starting at basics. So when I say digital workflow, what does that mean? We've talked around some of this a little bit, but let's kind of make sure it's really well understood. So when I say workflow can be clinical workflow, like getting them numb and then doing the rubber dam and then doing the prep. But I'm just like business workflow. So workflow is the systems we have of getting things done, and we all have them. Sometimes we have them on purpose, and sometimes we have them by accident.
Right.
But the way we do things. So how do we get the chart from the chart room to the front desk, to the back, and back to the chart? Getting it filed? How do we do the billing? How do we greet patients? How do we get the patients to the back? These are all workflow systems. So for example, a really simple one that we can all relate to is we're going to send reminders to patients. So that would work. So what that means is we would have data, information, and we talk about data, we think of computers, but in this case, data could be paper information as well. My old-fashioned paper appointment book. My other data, I would have to maybe look at the patient's chart, what's their phone number or other kind of contact information. So that's my data. Then over here on this side, this is the application. This is, in the olden days, our application was a person, okay? So she's got to take my data, the appointment time and phone number. She's going to apply it by then calling and getting that done. So that's data and application, that's workflow systems. The first step, the hybrid system, now I'm using computer to store my data. Okay, that's cool. So now I have the information on the computer. I have the, there's some phone number and all that kind of stuff. But my application is still this human being. So she's still having to go to the computer, check on the appointment, get the phone number. She might have to look at two places, maybe one if she's smart. And she gets all that information. Now she's still calling and doing the reminder. The next phase is that application is now done in the cloud. And so we have the information is stored electronically and digitally. It's transferred up to the cloud up here where another computer takes it and analyzes it and then sends it back down to earth in the form of a reminder. And no human being touches a chart, no human being picks up a telephone, no human being types in an email address. It's all done automatically and electronically using electronic or e-services that we find on the cloud. And that's one of the big changes, the big trends we've seen in technology, digital technology in the last decade. It goes under a couple of names. The one that's most common now is this SaaS, SaaS, software as a service. And we're seeing lots of that, and that's changing dentistry and changing business. So what software as a service means, so let's use the simple one we've already been talking about, which is the reminder service. So as a dentist, what do I want? Do I want to buy another software? Do I want to install the software? Do I want to get training on the software? Do I want to have a computer to run the software? Do I want to do updates on the software? Do I want to have to put security on it so it doesn't get hacked on the software? No. I want the service. I want reminders. That's what I want. So rather than buying the software, I buy the service. And the service is run not in my office, but in the cloud, which just means on the internet. It's run in another place completely. That's SaaS, that's software as a service. And it's understanding that, which I think is the big kind of next change we're going to see in how we use technology effectively. So it starts with electronic records, but I now have digital data. Because if I don't have digital data, I can't do this. If I'm putting things on paper charts, it's not going to work. So I have digital data. That's number one. Number two, then I have an internet connection, and I will buy a service, software as a service, and allow that service then to use my data to give me the results that I want. So now we're moving from doing things the way we always did them to doing them differently because the technology allows me to do that. The third thing is the person that does it, and that's the office technologist, the MVP of the future dental office.
Sounds wonderful. Now, let me ask you a question. What is some of the more common mistakes that happen when dentists do decide to introduce technology and maybe change the way things that they're doing business?
Well, we already kind of talked about two of them, which is do the things the way you always did it. The other one is is not have a goal or a vision. And so again, my mission is to help dentists understand that. So if they know what they're trying to accomplish, they know what's possible, then they buy technology and use it effectively. So often they go and they buy something without understanding what it can really do, and then they don't use it well. And this, again, the staff directs them in ways that aren't effective. So knowing what's possible and getting training. So typically what happens is the doctor buys some new technology. Let's make one we all are familiar with. The doctor buys Dentrix. So she gets Dentrix, and then she has training for 2 days. The trainer comes in, trains everybody on it, and then leaves, and they never get training again. An update comes out, no training. A new team member comes in, no training. The whole staff turns over, no training. And they never use it effectively. I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked to doctors, or staff, both. And the doctor says, or the team member says, I just wish, again, Dentrix is the most, I know the best. I just wish Dentrix did X, Y, Z. And I said, well, Dentrix does do X, Y, Z. Really? How long? Well, it's about 3 updates ago. It's been doing it for about 5 years. Really? And they don't know because they don't know what they don't know. And they didn't get upgraded training. So one of my big things is to urge dentists to budget for training, have annual training on your existing software. I mean, you might be using Dentrix for 15 years. You still need upgraded training for this team. And then you add a new technology, you have continuing training on it. And if you do that, you'll be much more effective doing it. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see. 2 mistakes that I see when they go paperless, and I'm matter of chartless. And I imagine there's some of the people that are right in that area already. One is that going paperless is not an event. It's not a weekend. It's a process. And so you back up, say this right. When you set up all the systems, internally systems center, you set a date. So everything from here forward is going to be digital, and everything from here back is still on paper. So in the beginning, like I did, my very first day of being paperless, I had to pull 2 charts. And the reason was because I held old x-rays that were pre-digital, they were panoramics, and I went back to them. And so as dentists need to realize they're going to do that as well. So in the beginning, you pull a chart when you need it. And interestingly, you don't need them very much, not nearly as much as we think we do. And if you've had like Dentrix for a number of years, we have some of the other good products like EagleSoft for a number of years, you have digital x-rays, you'll be surprised at how seldom you need to go back there, but you go back when you need it. Which brings me to the mistake, which is doctors feel that they have to scan or digitize all their old paper records.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. They say, oh, Larry, I've been practicing for 15 years, 20 years. I've got thousands of charts. I can't face having to scan them all. My answer is don't do it. Because for what I just talked about before, you don't need them as much as you think you do. And if you do, you go get it. And I've had doctors tell me, and it was just recently, like last year, this doctor's office and this team raised their hand in the office, and the lecturer says, oh, we're doing it. Our doctor thought it was important, so we're doing it. I said, okay, great. How long are you done? Oh, no, we've been working at it now for about 3 years. We're almost done. And I say, what's it costing? The doctor's thinking it's costing between, well, he said $10,000. I think it's cost more than that. So in team time away from the office, it's going to take you years and cost you $10,000 to $15,000. And the benefit is virtually nothing. It just don't do it. So you don't throw away your paper records. You get them when you need them. They're your archive. So don't scan everything. You do not need to do that.
Excellent. Great point. Because this is one of the most common questions I hear. And, I think there's some kind of a reservation, like I have to have all this information. What if I ever have to look this up? And I have to tell you, even though I designed my practice in 2002 to be paperless, I didn't build a place for a file cabinet. But what I found is that I actually ended up needing a chart because back then the flow just wasn't there the way we were doing this. And it took me a while to figure out how to do this. So I have this, I call it my $50,000 wall of shame, because this is how much I invested in to file those manila folders and the health questionnaires and the IKEA cabinets that I had to buy after the fact because I never built the filing room, and the labels. You just showed that slide with a bunch of charts piled up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I spent so much. I could have had a Ferrari. So I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, but I think that we're just, for a lot of doctors who have all that, they feel like they need to, they need to have access to it at some point, and they can't just put it in a storage. What I found is that in the first 6 months, when we just went cold turkey, we started using Yapi in the office. Obviously, it was originally designed for my practice. When I said, okay, I'm done, I'm not buying another manila folder. And, for the first 6 months, yes, we occasionally had to go and pull an old chart to look something up, and occasionally would scan something that we thought was important. I had that, expensive transparency scanner to scan some of the, x-rays that others brought to me, and some pianos, because my piano I didn't go digital with my piano until probably 2010. But, so we had those charts. But what I found after 6 months, we didn't need them. And they're in storage now. And maybe if once in the blue moon, someone requests a record, I have access to it. Periodically, we're able to shred them as the time goes by, and the record no longer needs to be kept. But it's so expensive to invest the time to scan those records. And there's, like I said, there's absolutely no value. And that's my pet peeve. So I'm spending so much time on this, and thank you for bringing that up. So I wanted to, there's another thing that comes up, and I wanted you to address it because, it's kind of real, but, this is something that we need to consider while going paperless or just using technology in our practice. I don't think it's just with paperless, because I think if you have a hybrid practice where you have all that information in the computer, and still using paper charts, I think you're still a potential victim to what I was going to mention, and that's security. Whether it's HIPAA or it's, we're worried about getting affected by a cryptovirus. Is this a real concern? And how can we protect ourselves to make sure, and our records to make sure that they're not stolen or that our patient's information is not exposed?
Yes, good point. And by the way, I love that $50,000 wall of shame. And that's the other thing when people ask me about ROI, because they look at that one chart and they go, well, this is cheap, it's free. Well, it's not free. It costs $5 or $6 and you've got 1,000 patients and then a chart and the IKEA folders. I mean, yeah, it costs a lot of money. It costs the same to do these paper charts as it does to do the computer system. But security is a big deal. And I didn't used to, it wasn't when I first started getting interested in this back, to last century BC. And but it certainly has evolved that way and it's become a big deal. And as dentists, we're professionals. We do have an obligation, both professionally, legally, morally, ethically, to protect our patients' information. So it's important we do that. On the other hand, the other thing that's at issue is HIPAA itself. So the HIPAA police are out there and they've become much more aggressive in the last 2 years. And people are getting fined literally millions of dollars. And so you need to protect yourself from them as well. So you need to do the right thing and protect your patients. And then you also need to understand and do the right thing to protect yourself. So you mentioned the fact that the hybrid offices are vulnerable, and that's absolutely true. You don't have to be a paperless office to be vulnerable, because even if you are, you're not doing a complete chart on the computer, you do have all the information that's significant for data thieves. You have the patient's name, you have their address, you have their birthday. Those are the three things they just love to have. You may have a social security number. Hopefully you're not storing those any longer. But all of those things are there. So yes, as a hybrid office, you certainly are a potential for a data thief.
Of course, you also have a ledger and all of the insurance billing. So you have all of the insurance codes and all of their health information on there, even though maybe your clinical notes are still in the paper chart.
Yeah, and interestingly, though, the cyber thieves, they don't care whether or not you had a filling. So they're not really looking for health information. For us as patients, it's kind of embarrassing to think that they know the medicines I'm taking or my diseases, but they're really looking for that data that they can sell. And it's changed. And by the way, medical/dental records are a premium on the dark web because they have all the information that they are really looking for. They're often called a FULZ, F-U-L-L-Z, because it also has a full demographic information of the of the patient. And I've read a bunch of different things of what that's worth. The first one I read was worth $100, and I read it was worth $300. The most recent one I said they're paying $1,000 on the dark web for fulls. But just to make the math easy, if it's $1,000 and you have 2,000 patients, now all of a sudden your practice is really worth a whole lot, okay, to those data thieves. Now, having said that, what's real? What do you really have to worry about, and how do you protect yourself? If you want to go, there's a website that's maintained by Health and Human Services. It's often called the Wall of Shame. You can actually find it very easily from my website. And it lists all the data breaches that have been reported through HIPAA, that have been 500 or more patient data breaches. The majority of them, about half, are lost hardware, not lost data. So a thief breaks in and steals a computer out of your back room. You leave a laptop in the back of your car and it gets stolen out of the car gets stolen. You lose a smartphone that has a connection to the office. Most of them are lost hardware or theft of hardware, which isn't really data theft. You know, the junkie that steals the laptop out of your backseat of your car is not trying to get data. They just want to sell a laptop. And so very few of those cases actually result in any patient harm. In fact, I've never heard of any of them resulting in patient harm. The ones and so that's the majority of cases. And so as a dentist, to protect yourself from those things, the simplest thing to do is just make them hard to steal. You know, lock it up in a locked closet, put one of those little cables around it so it's hard to steal. Just make it hard for your patients to get to it. The other thing that is good to know, though, however, when the hacking, by the way, actual hacks, where some cyber thief from some, Eastern European country sneaks in and steals our stuff, or maybe the Koreans do it, whatever it is. Those are the scary ones, but they're only about 8 to 10%. So it's not very often. I mean, 8 to 10%, that means like 90% are not that. But when it is a hacker, they get big numbers. So the biggest data breach in history in medicine was Anthem, the Blue Cross Blue Shield people. 80 million records were exposed. So wow. When it gets exposed, the hackers get the big numbers. But the actual number of breaches that we have to worry about as individual practitioners is not hackers. I mean, they're out there. But what you really need to worry about is just kind of protecting my data from theft. So here is a long answer to get down to the magic bullet. The best way to protect yourself from both the data thieves, to do the right thing for your patients, and to protect yourself from HIPAA is to encrypt your data. I'm going to come back to that. Let me just say protect yourself from HIPAA. So it used to kind of laugh, there's no HIPAA police. Well, now there are HIPAA police. And on these big data breaches, the people are being fined. And they're being fined not because of necessarily the data breach, but they didn't do all the paperwork. They didn't have the proper paperwork of the training. They didn't have the proper paperwork of their policy and procedures manual. They didn't do their, they didn't have an updated survey of their data, things like that. So saying, okay, you didn't do the right things, we're going to fine you. And the fines run between $200 and $300 per exposed record.
Wow.
So if you get fined $300 per exposed record, and you have 3,000 records, and that's not a lot because that's not active patients. That's 3,000 records on your computer. That includes all the patients that have been in your office the last 10 or 15 years, ever since you're in computerized. So 3 times 3, that's $900,000. It's almost $1 million fine. It will not be paid for by insurance. The insurance does not cover that. For most dentists, it means financial ruin. They're going to go bankrupt. So you do, in fact, need to protect yourself from HIPAA. So do the right thing, protect your patients, protect yourself from HIPAA, you encrypt your data. So that means all the data that has patient information on it is stored in an encrypted format, which means that the thieves, even if they get a hold of it, can't use it. If that happens, and you can prove it's encrypted, because again, with the government, it's all paperwork. So you have your IT specialist set up encryption for you. They document it for you. So if you do have a theft, someone steals a computer out of the back room, you can tell the HIPAA, well, it's encrypted, and they treat it like it didn't even happen. So that's the magic bullet. That's a get out of jail free card. The issue is that Dentrix and Ecosoft and all the other legacy programs were built in the 80s, and they weren't designed for this. And it's challenging. It's not something you can do on your own. You absolutely need a good IT professional set up for you. It is going to slow your system down a little bit, but it's worth it to give yourself the protection you need for both yourself and do the right thing for your patients.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for mentioning this. First of all, I just wanted to mention that, and again, go back to the fact that I think a lot of times the perception is, I still have charts. I'm not paperless. So, at least I have my patient data in the charts, but there is enough information in the computer. I mean, unless you literally still have a typewriter in your office, there's enough information in the computer to, become a victim and expose your patient. So we have, and I've seen a lot of practices not update their equipment or not update their software, their Dentrix for that matter. And just by virtue of doing that, they're not necessarily HIPAA compliant and not necessarily safe and protected. This is not the area you want to skimp on. And of course, you mentioned literally theft. My practice was burglarized twice. They came in, they took all of the computers, they took TVs. The only thing they couldn't take is the server, which was locked and chained to the wall. Okay, so the simplest thing to do today, chain your server to the wall, call your IT guy, have them encrypt it, train everyone for HIPAA. This is not the reason to stay away from technology. You still have to protect yourself, even if you're still doing a lot of things the way that you're used to, right?
Totally.
Unfortunately.
So they didn't get. So you didn't have to report as a data loss because your server was saved.
Yes, there was the computers that were, a lot of them weren't even computers. Actually, a lot of computers were also chained, so they just ripped off monitors from the walls, completely damaged my wall. So stupid, but there was more actually wall repair than the damage in the stolen equipment. And you're right, they weren't going after data. They were just looking for something to sell. So unfortunately, it's one of those things that, and I've had mail stolen from my mailbox multiple times. So now I have it sent to a protected PO box. When you practice enough years, stuff like that will come up, right? And you just got to make sure that the data that you do everything you can to protect the information that you have there. Unfortunately, we're kind of out of time. It just went by so fast. I'm looking at the clock, and we've been talking for an hour, which is nearly not enough to really unpack everything, all that knowledge that you have. I'm sure our listeners are going to want to, read up your blog and find out how they can get your book about going paperless. And I know you've published a few other guides. Can you please tell us where we can go for information?
Yeah, this is my Emmott Technology blog. I've been writing it for decades. And it's just my name, EmmettOnTechnology.com. And I add to it virtually every day. And some of it's like fun. Well, on Fridays I usually do a fun thing. It says, never go to a doctor whose plants have died. But the best way to use it is you can see up in the right-hand corner where it says subscribe via email. Just put your email address in there, hit the subscribe button, and then you'll get an email when I add to it. Like I said, which is virtually every day. If it's something that is valuable to you, you can read it, and it has links. So as we scroll down here, you can say, this is from yesterday. This is the FDA has put a plan in place for medical devices. Remember how we talked about the problem with the security of devices? And so this is a link to the original article. Here's another article about a new way of doing computer software as a thing. Well, this is something I do every week, dental art. Here's the thing about Facebook and how people got hacked on Facebook. Here's the one about the rising cost. Anyway, so there's just all kinds of things in there. The other way to use it, besides subscribing, is if you look over here on the right-hand side, this is categories. And so you can scroll down. Let's just do the one we talked about today, which is paperless. So if we click the paperless button, it's going to go to all the categories. So these are the articles I've written over the years on paperless. And so again, you can search through there and find things that might be valuable to you. And there's a search function here as well. So it's a free resource. It's online. And again, the best way to use it is subscribe, but you can find all kinds of things. And you mentioned the books. So let's look at those real quick. So I've written 3 books, and the one was on digital radiography, and the other one's on computers in treatment rooms. Those things have happened, but really the one that people are still buying a lot of is this one, going paperless. So it's available on my dremmott.com. I can link from the blog as well. And you notice it says right here it's $99. I'm going to give you a coupon code. So get ready to write this down. Put it in your show notes. It's EOT for Emmott Technology, it caps EOT59. And if you use that, you get like 40% off or something like that.
Oh my goodness! Thank you so much.
Yeah. And so that's
great
available
book.
as well.
It's absolutely a great book. It's a great primer. I read it. The quote is from that book, and a lot of what I kind of learned about going paperless is coming from this book. So anyone who is considering transitioning to a completely paperless environment, it's going to be a great investment. And thank you so much for the offer code. We'll absolutely share it with our customers and our listeners.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very fair. Very nice. I appreciate that.
And thank you so much for coming on the show, for taking your time. I hope maybe you'll be able to come back again, and there's so many things to talk about still. Thank you so much, and have an amazing day. Have an amazing rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Gina. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for inviting me again. I'm so glad to be here. I really appreciate what you're doing for the industry as well, and thank you.
Thank you.